Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Today is Monday, the 8th, January 2024. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to talk about something that is frightful, but it's here. And listen, you guys in my audience, like I checked demographics, the other day, and I was surprised to see that most of the people in my audience are men, and they're around my age. Most of them live in the United States. I found that very interesting. But the thing about it is, most of you two are a little bit different type of man than the normal. You're brave. You face things head on in your life. A lot of you probably are grandfathers, or have rather large extended families. You don't hide from the truth. And what I'm going to point out to you guys could save you from being very sick. And it's also, you need to be brave to take in this information, because it is not good. It's something that's very much not good. What I'm going to point out to you guys. And I'm going to talk about something called the Inoculum. I'm going to explain what it is. And you really want to listen, because this is vital information. Lab rats. They did experiments on lab rats with, I think it was influenza A, type A, I think it was. At any rate, what the Inoculum is, it's the initial dose of viruses that enter your system when you're going to get sick with something. It's called the Inoculum. Now, when the virus enters your system, any virus, they all work the same way, basically. They incubate in your system. What that basically means is the virus are replicating themselves. That's why you don't get sick instantaneously. I mean, you don't go to the supermarket or go to a doctor's office or something and you're sick within 1 hour with the virus because somebody was coughing there. It's not what happens. Generally, it's 4, 5, 6, 7 days later. How come with some people it's only a day later, 2 days later, they start to get sick? Other people, it might take a week or more. Why? It's got everything to do with the Inoculum. So they took these lab rats, right? And they could control how much of this influenza virus they could enter into the lab rat system. Now, they put a small amount of the actual live viruses into the system of these rats. What that does is, as soon as it enters the system, the virus starts to multiply. It has a period of time. Different viruses have a different period of time that they reproduce and multiply in your system. Some viruses reproduce faster and some slower. But that initial inoculum is where they're doing the doubling factor. And it works on the same principle of an exponential function. That's how it works. It doubles like every so many hours. So, in this experiment with the rats, they gave them the Inoculum. They noticed that if they give the rats a rather large Inoculum, every single rat died. It overwhelmed their system because their immune system didn't have time to mount a defense against the virus. They gave the rats a very small inoculum, or initial dose of the virus, and most all the rats lived. Or they didn't get it near as bad, because their immune system, it's basically a race that's going on here. Just like when you watch horses racing on a track. Which horse wins is a horse that gets a head start. So if your immune system gets a head start, and that time is everything. It takes your immune system time to mount a defense. So it's a race going on inside your body between the virus replicating itself and doubling that initial inoculum and your immune system mounting a defense. Okay? So it basically kind of works like that. You know, how you in the real world get a inoculum of virus is you get next to somebody who's coughing and sneezing and maybe they're spewing the virus all over you. They're going to give you a large inoculum. You're going to get sick much quicker. Your immune system doesn't have a chance to respond to that virus, and you get terribly sick, maybe 104-degree temperature, because when your immune system, it overwhelms your immune system, and that's your immune system trying to catch you up with a rapidly expanding virus in your system. Okay, so now you have that basic knowledge. Now, there's a second thing I want to talk about here, and we're going to get right into it. COVID now has become endemic in the population. And it's got new versions of itself. It's mutating and changing, and the newest and latest version of it is a virus called the JN1. That's what it's called. It's rapidly spreading, and it's probably causing an awful lot of the amount. If you ever went to the hospital lately, or doctors' clinics, or places like that, there's people in there that are terribly sick right now. Respiratory illnesses right now are on the spread. They're on the increase like crazy. Okay? But I wanted to point out something else about all this. In 2020, we were introduced to something that we never had in our systems our whole lives. And I mean, take me for instance. I was almost 60 years old the first time this was introduced to my system ever. It's called a spike protein. Before 2020, nobody in the world had spike proteins. Now, every single person of the world has been exposed to spike proteins. Where do they come from? They come from this novel virus. So you want to stay away from this. You do not want spike proteins, because spike proteins, I believe, now this is my own, now I'm going to venture into my own personal opinion. I believe that spike proteins have a cumulative negative side effects to your body. I believe that it's kind of like this, guys, kind of like this. Picture a young guy. He goes out and gets off of his head drunk. The next day he's got a hangover. He's done damage to his body, but yeah, sure, he gets better. But if he keeps repeating that behavior year after year after year, what do you think's going to happen to his liver? It's got a cumulative effect. It's very negative to his body. He might develop liver toxicity. He might, after a while, he might actually develop something called the DTs. This is what alcoholics, but my point is this cumulative effect is going to get him in the end. And that's the way with these spike proteins. You want to keep your body as free of them as you possibly can, or as little as possible. You want to stay away from this virus as much as you can, but I know it's everywhere. People are coughing with it. They're all over the place. A lot of people have it now. It's having another wave because of this new J1 variant. JN1 variant. So, that's why I told you guys about the inoculum. Might be a good idea to really wash your hands a lot. Start going back to hand sanitizer again. Start social distancing yourself again right now, because right now what we got going on, we've got everybody. If you haven't noticed and you haven't been out, if noticed that the emergency centers are full all across America, here in Canada, it might be time to actually start taking preventative measures that you took during the COVID thing. And it didn't hurt. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't hurt you to do it. You know, be careful. Give people distance, especially if they're coughing. Maybe even, now myself, this is just for me. I'm not recommending it for everybody, but just for me. I'm going back to when I go in the grocery store, someplace like that, I slip a mask on out of my pocket. And you say, oh, Glenn, because there's very negative connotations about doing that. But I find that I don't want to get a large inoculum. I don't want to have a 104-degree temperature. If I do catch it, I'd much prefer to have it slowly incubate in my system, my immune system to build a response to it before it overwhelms my system and gives me a 104-degree temperature. So that maybe I'll only have a 99-degree temperature. I'd much prefer that. And rather than have it go deep into my chest, just a little head cold feeling. I'd much prefer that with a small inoculum than to have some bozo that didn't stay home when they're sick cough in my face and give me a large inoculum. I'm going to avoid them like the plague if I hear them coughing or people getting right up close to me. I'm so, no, back off, back off, back off. I don't want to get, you're sick, why didn't you stay home? That's my opinion on it right now. So this is what I wanted to let you guys know about it is, we're not free of this virus. This virus keeps coming, it keeps coming, it keeps coming. And slowly but surely, it's introducing these spike proteins into our system. And I'm very, very concerned what the long-term effects are going to be as time passes of these spike proteins. We don't know yet. We haven't had enough time with this to pass. What I'm talking about is in 3, 4, 5 years down the road, there might be people dropping dead on the street corners from cardiac arrest or whatever, and they'll say, oh well, it wasn't, he had a heart attack. Yeah, but what caused it? Was it the irritation in his arteries and stuff caused by these stupid spike proteins? We just don't know yet. We don't know what the long-term side effects of being exposed to spike proteins is going to be. But we do know there's already being studies done on what it does to your brain. Severely diminishes your gray matter in your brain. I was reading a study yesterday on that. So basically, I guess it's slowly turning us into imbeciles as well. Never been anything like this before, and I'm fearful for mankind's future if we can't get rid of this disease. And if it keeps mutating. Because it could mutate back into a strain that's more virulent as well. And they're not telling you that. So this is a very, very, very dangerous thing that we're still not rid of it. And it would be a wonderful day if we could get rid of it. But I just don't know. And so this is not your normal, ordinary flu, guys. And all these people out there, oh, it's just the flu, it's just the flu. No, it appears like the flu, and its symptoms are like the flu. But it has this nasty thing that is actually, it's a blood illness. It's something that attacks. And in the early stages of COVID, back when the original COVID was going through, we saw more of this. Things like blood clots and things like that. This is not a flu. Okay, let's move on. I told you guys, I know it's distasteful to even talk about this thing because I've had enough of it. I want it gone. I don't even like talking about it, but I need to mention this to you guys, and I need to put it out there so you guys can perhaps take a little bit more precautions. Washing your hands and things like that could really help you and save you and keep you from getting a large inoculum of it. Okay, so that's why I did this morning. Anyway, let's move on. And let's not talk about this anymore now. Israel says Hezbollah has struck sensitive air traffic base in the north and warns of another war. So Hezbollah is launching rockets. And Israel's starting to think about having another war. Another war. I guess to the north. Now, Russia has been sending in these National Guards into they've deployed 35,000 Russians of the National Guard to repress the Ukrainian people from dissent in the areas where they have already taking territory. It says partisans have determined that the number of Russian military personnel present in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, according to the National Resistance Center. According to information received from the Ukrainian underground, soldiers from the Russian National Guard are suppressing civilian resistance in the rear, on the rear flanks. So they don't want, these are filtration measures amongst the civilian population, identifying members of the underground movement. So in Ukraine right now, what they're doing is the Russians are, this to me is a sign that the Russians are absolutely determined to keep those territories that they annexed, not allow any dissent in these regions, and this is why they put these 35,000 soldiers of the National Guard in there. Moving on now, in other stories, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik vows to tear his country apart despite U.S. warnings. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Bosnian Serb separatist leader vowed to carry out weakening his war-scarred country to the point where it will tear apart, despite a pledge to the United States to prevent such an outcome. Now, you want to know where this is? Let me just take a look. I got it on the map here someplace. Here we go. It's this country right here, highlighted. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Well, let's move in a little bit. So it's near Romania. It's just next to Serbia. And they're very worried that there's going to be trouble happening. And again, like, the trouble in the world is spreading around. Can you see it spreading? War is spreading. So, if we look here, it says that he wants to take the war-scarred country to the point where it'll tear apart, despite his pledge to the United States. He says, "I'm not irrational. I know the American response will be to use force, but I have no reason to be frightened by that national interest." The president of Bosnia's Serb-run part told the Associated Press in an interview on Friday. He said, "Any attempts to use international intervention to further strengthen Bosnia's shared multi-ethnic institutions will be met by Bosnian Serbs' decision to abandon them completely and take the country back to a state of disunity and dysfunction. I guess like it was during their brutal ethnic war, interethnic, is it, war of the 1990s. And so what's the United States doing about it right here today is they're going to fly fighter jets over Bosnia as a sign of support to the country as the Serbs call for succession. It says Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina. 2 U.S. fighter jets are set to fly over Bosnia on Monday in a demonstration of support for the Balkan country's integrity in the face of increasingly secessionist policies of the Bosnian Serb pro-Russian leader. So, you see, it's this Russian influence getting in there. And if you look at the country here, you can see that it's not far away from the war-torn area of Ukraine, I should say. And Romania is right in the middle here. Now, here's Ukraine, you know. I mean, this is getting close, too close to home. War is spreading, and this is what I'm pointing out to you guys. It's these troubles are just. It's almost like you go to the hospital, you know, and you got some sort of infection, and it's in one spot, say your elbow, and then you go back the next day and you notice an infection is spread up to your armpit with another big red blotch. That's what this is like. It's like it's spreading. You know, it started in Ukraine. Now we see it in Gaza, and then now it's spread down to. It's spreading all over the place. Now we're going to take a look at something else here, where I had the article. Just got to find it. Here it is, right here. Financial trouble in China is spreading as well, and it all started going back. You remember a number of months ago when we had that big thing with the property development companies that were starting to go down? Evergrande and different property company managements. Well, these shadow banks are huge, and they're starting to go down now. I can't pronounce some of these names. Hongji, I think it is. Hongji, I think the Z's silent. Hongji Enterprise Group. But they're huge. I mean, okay, to us over here in the West, these companies sound rather strange and we're not used to it. But this is like saying some big bank like Bank of America is going down in the Chinese version of it. You know what I mean? Like, this is big, really big. And this Chinese shadow bank now has filed for bankruptcy. A major Chinese shadow bank has filed for bankruptcy on the grounds it was unable to pay its debts. On Friday, a Beijing court accepted the application from Zhangyang Enterprise Group, which has lent billions to the real estate firms. So, what we're looking at is in real time a collapse of the real estate sector in China, which is going to spread to their general financial system through. It's the same thing like the war. It's spreading. And if China goes into a massive financial crisis, which it seems like they're on the verge of, they could carry us down with them. You know what they say about people swimming in the water. You know, you got to be very careful. If you see somebody struggling in the water, say there's some woman and say she's 400 pounds, you know, and you see her flailing in the water and she's sinking, right? And you figure, well, you know, I'm going to go out and save her. You swim out to save her. She'll grab a hold of you, jump on top of you, push you under to get up because she's desperate for air. She'll take you down with her. You got to be careful of that. You know, that's why they make life preservers. You know, something to cling to. And, you know, this is the way with the financial system. It's the same deal. China goes down, we're right on the brink. It could start a contagion. You know, and it seems like this is a slow-moving train in China that's been started quite a while ago. You know, remember when those first property developers started to go down? But now it's starting to spread out into their banking system. So in China, we're starting to see contagion. But we've already seen quite a little bit of banking system problems in the United States that already exist. And the Bank Term Funding Program, you know. You remember? They had Silicon Valley Bank went down, then they had the Bank Term Funding Program, which saved our banking system. But they still owe like $640 billion. That's just in that one sector they owe. Now there's like maybe a couple hundred more billion in the commercial real estate property sector. The banks have got their finger in the pie. And now all this is going to come due in March. Well, it's going to take just about that same amount of time for this Chinese shadow banking to start to manifest itself. In other words, China starts to drown and carry us down with them. And we're already drowning. We're already taking on water in our lungs. So this is like two big whales in the pool, and both of them are drowning. Now who's going to save them? You know what I mean? This is kind of the situation we're in right now in the world. Not only that, with all these wars spreading around like rash. And of course the wars are probably all caused by this. Is probably what's spurring on the war, because when finances get bad, then they take you to war. It's as simple as that. Let's take a look at the silver price today. Boy, what a show I had to do today. You know, I mean, it's why isn't this price coming up? Here we go. Look at this sick price for silver, too. You know, when times really get bad, and it really manifests itself that times are bad. Well, what we're having a bunch of protracted crises that are coming at us from every different angle, but none of them have really fully manifested themselves yet. They're just like threatening. It's like a little guy in a cage with about 12 lions. They haven't ate him yet, but they're threatening them. They're growling and they're approaching closer and they're turning their teeth up like this, and they're growling and they're coming in closer to him, and he's all crouched in the corner, this little guy. You know what's going to happen next. They're going to eat him. Well, that's what we got going on here. We got all these crises, potential nuclear war, potential financial system collapses, elections coming up in the United States. It's just a total poop show. It's going to be. The whole thing is just unbelievable. It's like a dozen lions threatening. They're growling. We're all crouched in the corner, but they haven't struck yet. None of them have really struck yet. And I'm on here and I'm saying, hey, listen guys, watch out, it's coming. I can see it coming. Doom. When all these things look like they're going to strike at the same time. Perhaps later this year. What you going to do? It could actually, it's so much magnitude to it, it could actually trigger a SHTF. And I ain't kidding. You guys, you're on here watching because you know that I ain't kidding with this. This is bad. But it hasn't happened yet, so most people out there, 90% of the population out there are living in la-la land. They don't even know this stuff's going on. Yeah, they know what's going on, but they don't pay any. They say, oh, you know, there's always been wars in the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, China's always had real estate crises. Yeah. And they're just complacent. They're so complacent. They don't realize just one of these problems, if it really hits hard, could just cause a disaster that would make 2008 look like twiddly-dinks. Like nothing in comparison. So silver's at 20, and all of this, look at the silver price. What a bargain they're giving you with their stupid SLV and their trading of these paper derivatives. They've made a bargain of a lifetime. Silver, precious, not called precious metal for nothing. Such limited quantities of it, but yet the price of a can of beans is getting almost up to the price of a silver. For crying out loud. You know, something's wrong here. You know, if everything else keeps going up in price, it'll be cheaper to pave your driveway with silver rather than hire the gravel truck. It'll be cheaper than gravel in the end, because gravel price will go up to well, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But I'll tell you what's not an exaggeration is when you see prices going up on everything else, but the silver price staying down cheap, after a while those prices that differential starts to change. And massively. Okay, let's move on and take a look at crypto today. Bitcoin's up 44,991. Ethereum's 2271 and XRP's 56.6 cents. Now the Dow Jones Industrial Average today is 37,383. It's down 82 points. And taking a look at crude oil today, it's down $3.57, and that is really, really cheap for crude considering what's going on in the world right now. I just wonder what's going on there, why it would drop $3.57 or almost 5% in one day. That's a big drop for crude price. Bonds and rates today, we're looking at fallen yields on the long end. 10 years at 3.99. You notice how they're manipulating it and keeping it below 4%. So it's dropped 4.9 basis points today. And the U.S. 30 years at 4.16, and it's dropped 3.1 basis points. And taking a look at the dollar index, and the dollar index is dropping today at 102.19. One more thing I got to say, guys, is there was a period in time, I'm going to talk about it in the past tense now, because I thought, I mean, you know, I did many a show. I thought that we were going to have a crisis in the financial system because of the Feds raising interest rates. I thought once they started to get up close to normalizing interest rates in this very quick, rapid rise in interest rates policy that they've done, I figured that we'd have a crisis in the markets. The markets would fall, and that would trigger them to go back to quantitative easing, and that's what I figured would happen. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. We didn't get the precipitous fall in the markets. The market didn't fall down 10,000 points like I thought it would. It was more resilient than I thought it would, but now we've reached the inflection point where the Fed now is starting to already move toward their pivot without having the big fall in the market. So this period where people were worried that we were going to have a deflationary period and they were hoarding cash and stuff, we're coming to a close. The door's closing on all that. And here we see it reflected, you know, it's going to be reflected even more so. The dollar's on its way to 70. Compared against the euro mostly. Euro makes up, I think, 60% of the basket of currencies that they use to compare the dollar against to obtain a dollar index. You know? And so here I am talking to you guys, talking about a dollar that's going to go down to 70. So what's its purchasing power going to be? So hoarding dollars at this point in time, I mean, I could see that instead of having a market crash, that as the Fed starts to pivot in the opposite direction, as interest rates start to drop and stuff, you know, that moving out of the dollar into anything is better than trying to save right now. Saving right now has become a mug's game. Sad to say that, but it's true. Thank you guys for listening to my show. You guys have a great afternoon. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.